everybody, it's David Sable back again for New York Festival's Creativity from the Other Side, when we talk to the greatest creative leaders in our industry and elsewhere and discuss with them what makes them creative, what drives their ability to create the great things they do. And today, we actually are going to talk to somebody in our industry, somebody core to our industry. And like everyone else, he is now become an FOD, a friend of David. He's somebody who I've admired from afar and am just so excited to talk to today. Andrés Ordóñez, who is the Chief Creative Officer at FCB Chicago. And my history with FCB goes back a long time. Carter Murray is a great friend and one of the people I admire most in the industry. IPG and everything about it is close to me, from its leadership all the way down. And I think that the story of FCB over the past 2 years has been incredible. But I really want to talk about it. And you can see Andres is wearing an FCB sweatshirt, and we talked about that. People should be proud of the agencies that they work for, the companies they work for, and of course of their clients. And we're going to talk about that as well. But just a quick word. I mean, I think it's important to know that Andres has won a ton of awards, a ton, but we're not going to talk about that. And he's won golds and titaniums, and he's won at New York festivals, and that's all great. But what's more important is what led him there, and the understanding that these awards are outcomes of things, and we're going to talk about what that is. So without any further ado, my new FOD, Andres, how are you?
Hi, David. Thank you so much for having me here. It's a pleasure and an honor to be talking to you.
Well, I honestly feel the same way. So before we start talking about creativity, let's just talk just a little about you and how you've been holed up during COVID, how you've held up during COVID, how it's affected you, your family.
Well, it haven't been easy in many ways, but it has been great at the same time, because I actually started working at FCB 6 months before COVID. So pretty much I met half of my team through Zoom, just like we're meeting right now. And it became very personal in a very good way. It gave me the time to meet everyone one-to-one. It pushed all of us to do stronger, better work, no matter the limits that were surrounding us. And I just feel that for some reason, the outcome of it's always been like, how do we come stronger together, even when we're far? And I think we built a system that has worked really well for us. But obviously, every time we finally get back together, there's a beautiful energy to it. So I'm that kind of person that I try to see more the positive than the negative. And I think the outcome made us stronger, actually.
Good, I like that. And what about your family? You have 2 young daughters?
I have 2 young daughters and a wife. They're great. They're back at school. Thank you. They're back at school.
Thank you, God.
Thank you, God. We needed that. Both at school. One's 12, and the other one's 8. And my wife is a photographer. And we also have a dog, Frapple, which it's a COVID dog. Obviously, one more COVID dog.
What kind of dog did you get as a COVID dog?
It's a golden doodle.
No way. My children bought a golden doodle. It's also Wolfie.
Oh, there you go. They're awesome. They're incredible. They're
so
smart.
Dogs, right? I love it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, we're in love with her. So it's been great. I think it goes back to the same thing. It's the positive side of everything.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you have a female dog.
Yeah, I'm surrounded by all female just in case.
Oh wow. So I only have daughters as well, but after this we'll talk, because I'll make sure that Wolfie, my kid's dog, gets introduced to your dog.
There you go. We can do that.
Who knows what could come of that. But let's talk on this. Let's just talk a little bit about your background. Let's talk about how you got to Chicago, and then, but stop at Chicago, because I want to talk about you and Kelly for a minute. But just tell us about where you were born, how you started the industry.
Well, I was born in Bogota, Colombia, and my father actually used to have a small agency in Colombia. And my mother used to be a model, and that's where that connection started between them. And then a couple of years after I was born, and obviously I always was around the industry one way or another.
By the way, not to be politically incorrect, but Bogota, which is a place that I love, but I also noticed that Narcos is one of your favorite shows.
Oh,
so I don't want to make too much out of this. The fact that you come from Bogota and it's one of your favorites, it also happens to be one of mine. I've watched it in every iteration, and I love watching it in the Spanish, which is amazing. My Spanish sucks, but it got way better watching the show. Anyway, I just wanted to point that out, that is great. I love it. So you're also proud of that. So that's good news.
Yeah, like we can't hide things. We got to talk about the things, and we have to open up about everything that happens in around us. And again, it made us a better country in many ways, and made us stronger during very hard times, and we all learn from that. But and also, even if you don't like Narcos, if you're Colombian, they will always ask you, have you watched Narcos?
Right. So you might as well watch it.
You don't have, there's no option. There's no way out of the show. But yeah, so born in Colombia. So did all my high school until high school in Colombia. My mother actually was raised in America. So I moved back. They got divorced when I was 13, and I moved to Miami where my mom lived. And I went to FIU first, and I started there, Bachelor in Arts and Finance. And while I was doing that, I met this incredible teacher on my art class, and he told me, have you ever seen Miami Art School? Have you checked that at school? Because I kept failing in English, actually in grammar. It's like, well, I want to be a creative. I want to be an art director. And he's like, oh, you need to first pass that copywriting class. And I was like, oh. It was my second year here, so I had to polish a lot of my English. But I went to Miami Art School, and Pipa and Ron were incredible. They opened their hearts and arms, and I walked into an incredible school that made a lot into what it's my career right now. I had the opportunity to be the first student to go and open in Madrid, and I was in London, I was in Minneapolis, and back in Miami. So when I graduated, I got a phone call from BBDO with an offer to go to a small agency they had inside called Pentamark for the Jeep account in Puerto Rico. So I moved there. I was young, and I was like, I'll move to an island 1 or 2 years and figure it out. While everyone was moving to New York and 7 people living in one studio, I had my own apartment next to the beach. So I was like, why not? Let me try that. And on a Jeep account. But again, life put in front of me an incredible person, which was Ramiro Millan, the CEO at BBDO back then. And he became like my godfather in advertising. I learned a lot of the things that I have right now from him, and what it was supposed to 1 year turn into 7. And he gave me the opportunity to become 5 years into the business. For one or another reason, I had the opportunity to run the agency, to run BBDO, and I was very young and against all odds. All CCOs were super old, and I was like, this guy's gonna crash. But again, we all had the heart on the right place, and we were like, again, behind an incredible brand like BBDO is, and we made it one of the most creative shops, and that's where everything started. 7 years into Puerto Rico, life put me in a hard moment that it was losing my mother to cancer. So I decided to quit BBDO and move back next to her. And I was again lucky enough to get to an incredible offer by an independent agency back then, Zubi Advertising, to do work in Hispanic and become their CCO, kind of CCO for them. They don't have that title, but it's VP. And then I went there and I stayed with them in there 4 years. But I always had this thing that I was like, why do advertising, why do ideas have to rely on language? I was like, a big idea, at the end of the day, we're humans and they transcend cultures. And I just wanted to try more and more and more. So my mom was gone. I had met my wife. We were like, all right, we're starting our life. We had our first daughter, and we're like, let's just restart ourselves. And then Eric Hoyt called me for 1 hour here in Chicago, and I'm Bravo. So I moved to Chicago. Back then, when Wrigley used to be inside the Hispanic side, was at Bravo. And in there, I started, he was like, hey, there's 7 people there. You want to give it a shot? And I'm like, yeah, there's nothing to lose. And I went there, and we actually started pitching and growing Bravo a little bit. And I got the opportunity to work a little bit at general market while Bob Winter was there. And there was an opportunity then to move to New York. And while we were discussing it about moving, BBDO called again because of the Wrigley work. So what happened with the Wrigley work is that we were doing work between BBDO and Bravo, but the work was starting to work both ways. And some of our work from Hispanic, like, why don't you just do it for general market? So this whole dynamic started to happen. I ended up going back to BBDO to help them like grow all the Hispanic market for the different brands. And I always remember, I always try to chase the one thing no one wants. And back then it was, I remember they were doing a little piece on Orbit. It was like a brand book. And it was like, it was a hot potato, to be honest. And I was like, I'll take it. And the I'll take it turned into working really close with the Orbit team globally to the 5-gun and the extra. And then that turned into a year or two into it. I became the global ECD for Wrigley brands at BBDO. And again, doing like great things next to my team. We were able to create a beautiful film back then that was called Sarah and Juan for Extra Gum. I don't even remember that. It was the rappers that had the drawings inside. And that was kind of the launch into a lot of the things that happened after. Then there was an opening for CCO, and back then Tony's Paul, another incredible person in my life, gave me the opportunity to become the CCO at Energy BBDO in Chicago. And things started to, we try to make the team as international as possible, to be honest, because I believed, because of all my career, I've been saying this whole thought about big ideas can transcend culture. And if I was thinking of that, I needed to just make sure that the team was made of everyone coming from a different perspective. And we did that, different lenses, different countries, different languages. And we started to do beautiful work for the agency. And we started having great award shows as the outcome. But more than anything, we became a little bit of a community, like a beautiful family that we were just chasing something that we all wanted when things were like, we were kind of always the underdogs, not from here, the agency from Chicago. And suddenly we started doing something beautiful. And then a couple of years after, I was called by FCB. And it was the first time I was meeting with Susan, and with Susan was incredible because even though, well, she was also a BBDO, she was Mars, she was M&M's, I was gum. We never crossed paths. So we were together, and I met also Fred LeBron, and Fred had a lot to do also on my move to the agency. So when I met them both, and Carter, and Tyler and Kelly and Michael and everyone, I was like, okay, this is the right thing. And I felt that for many it was like, why are you going to leave BBDO, a family and a brand that I love so much? It's not that I loved, I honestly believe and love the brand for everything, and I still have a lot of it on my DNA that I keep on reminding myself and telling my teams what I learned through my career at BBDO. It was the opportunity to go to the main office, to the big office, FCB Chicago, 700 people, 44 or 45 brands, all the tools, a bigger toolbox to play with, and try to see what else is next. What can we do?
But so hold it right there for a second, because I want to get that. So first, let's just go back. I mean, I think with the beauty of this story is the humanity and this is what I want people to pay attention to, is the humanity, is the mentoring. And I always believe that mentoring is a two-way street. Like, you can't be mentored unless you want to be mentored. And so mentors, the best mentors, tend to find people like you, who it's not just that they're deserving of it or great, but they want to be mentored. And that's what makes them better. And I was always lucky in my life in the same way. So I just want everyone to pay attention to that, and also just to the way you acknowledge it, because I love that. It's so important. Mentoring is just such a critical thing. I want to talk a bit about the diversity, and then we'll get back to FCB, but then quick, because I want to get into the work.
Right.
I think it's fascinating when you talk about the idea that big ideas can often do transcend culture. And the reason I think it's important, and I do remember those times with Eric and Bravo, because there were many pieces of business where clients would turn around and just say, hey, like, that's a great idea. Like, why aren't we doing that? AT&T was one in particular, where all of a sudden there's mainstream advertising that has Spanish words in it. And it came to work. So I always felt that that's true. I think the issue that we have today amongst many clients and amongst others is the notion that diversity doesn't mean a big idea transcends culture. That very often diversity means like, I want to see something total, I want to see myself.
Yeah.
Like, I want this siloed, and then you're actually diverse. And it's a big debate. It's a debate in company. We had a discussion recently with someone, it's with Destiny Chambers. It's a wonderful interview to watch, where she talks about diversity much more the way you speak about it. And yet there are many people who speak about it completely differently.
Yeah. Well, yes. I think that the problem that I see a lot is that we walk a fine line. I think that diversity, everyone has a different way of seeing it. For some, it's just the casting, which I think it's wrong. But that's a very personal way of seeing things. I believe that we have to learn to see life and things through different lenses and understand which are those that can influence people more. And that's how I try to see it. I think when you think about technology, the Hispanic over-index in the use of that. When you talk about culture and things like that, you can look at the Black community. When you see LGBT, everyone has so much to offer that if we could understand, it's kind of an equalizer, who influences who, and how we can use that to make sure that we do our very best work. Yes, make sure that everyone's represented. I think we have to do that, and we're more aware than ever before on those things. But I always try to learn deeper, a little bit deeper inside behind the skin. What can I learn? How can you influence my life? How can you influence other consumers' lives? And how can we have a bigger impact because of learning from you? And I think that's when advertising becomes so beautiful and so powerful, when we are able to share those values and project them. That when values are aligned, I think you see deeper than color. You see, it's like, that's me. And you forget completely who that is.
So I would add to that what you're really talking about, though, is that big ideas transcend culture. To your point, execution is how you might cast, it's who you work with, it's a background, it's a place, but the notion of the big idea very often does transcend, right? So we know that stories of, the critical stories in the world, like, I mean, I just saw Steven Spielberg's West Side Story, which was controversial in some places. I think it's spectacular and brilliantly done. What's amazing when you really think about it, I mean, it's Romeo and Juliet. So, here's Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, which, by the way, has its origins in stories from Greek mythology, so it's way before, translated into his times, Elizabethan England, and then retranslated by Sondheim and Bernstein to New York in the 1950s, and then again retranslated, same period of time, but with a different view. The idea is big and transcends. So you can do Romeo and Juliet in any culture.
Exactly.
In any language.
Exactly. And I think those are the things that I try to find, because I feel that that's where stereotyping and all those things disappear, because then we connect at a different level. I also being surrounded, we're very lucky enough to be surrounded by people with different lenses, and we have someone really that runs our diversity team, that it's Mark Wilson, and he, in the past 2 years, I have learned so much about culture, and I think that opens completely the way you do things, how you approach things, the kind of work you want to do, and it makes you actually do better work out into the world.
Good, I love it. So now let's go back to the thing, and again, just very quickly, great opportunity, because it's not always that a new president of an agency and the chief creative officer come in about the same time, which I think is a huge, huge opportunity and a blessing, because it gives you an opportunity to look at everything together. And I think you both did. And then you get hit by COVID. And I think some of the interesting things is during that period, you've talked a lot about culture, COVID, and the challenges. So maybe just say a word about how does culture, because you started off by telling us how, great work, despite the fact that everybody was remote, the ability for you to key in and really get to know people, maybe in a way different way, because there are no distractions. Like nobody's walking into your office when you're talking to me on Zoom.
Right.
So how did you see the cultural challenges, and how did you overcome them, other than the Zoom thing, obviously? And where do you think it goes?
I think, well, there's a couple of things. I feel that I found an incredible partner on Kelly. Kelly and I have kind of the same drive, which is, it's crazy sometimes. We don't stop, and it's kind of like, there was actually, we were asking these questions around, what do you think about your agency, the culture, and everything else that the typical thing that we do every year as an agency, just to learn. And one of the questions, like, how much does your CCO and president agree? And it was like 97%. And that just tells you how tight we are, and it's huge. And I think the reason why we were able to have that impact is because we are so aligned, even though we had never worked before. And I think that's what we found in each other. The other thing that we knew, or we started at the beginning of that, it was we have this thing that every month it's kind of almost a TV show that we put together every month, where we are very open about where we are as an agency, about the work, about the people, get to know everyone. It's a little bit of conversations like we're having right now with you, David. And it started to create a little bit of a moment to bring us all together, no matter the circumstance. And I think people starting to like that. So once a month, it will be many of us just doing that. The other thing that happened is, I believe, when you take care of your people, when you put someone first, you have them 1,000%. When you put the work before them, you might have them at 50%, and it's incredible. So when they understand that you're valued as a human, which I believe it's the way to do things, people just tend to give 1,000 more for you and for the agency. So doing that culture, as an art director, I love swag. So I'm always creating like the last t-shirt, the new hat, the new thing. And I'm just like sending stickers for computers. So you kind of create this little community of 700, and everyone kind of feeds each other and getting together. Obviously, we all had drinks at the beginning of COVID, but it starts getting old of getting those happy hours. But for example, something that I realized is I'm very into I like to do like running and biking and a bunch of stuff. But a good friend one night called me and he's like, I want you to try this. I see that you're working many hours. And he introduced me to something that is called yoga nidra. And nidra, it teaches you how to disconnect and reset yourself. And I did it for the first 2-3 weeks or first month during COVID. And I said, can we do this at the agency? And suddenly it was a beautiful moment, because we were in a moment where everyone was all squares on Zoom and everything. And twice a week, we were black squares. We just turned off the cameras, and this incredible person came to us and taught us Nidra and disconnect and reset everyone. And you started to see the comments on everyone. I was like, thank you for this.
Wow, I love that. That's amazing.
I've been handling levels of stress and things, and my life has changed. And I found this hour to just unplug and reset. And I think that one way or another brought us closer, because again, it was a very different level of connection with the team, but also understanding that we're putting them first. And I think Kelly and I, what we always try to do is put people first and understand that we overshare. Kelly and I overshare what we want, what are their goals, where we want to take the agency. But we also know that the agency, it's made of all of us, not Kelly and Andres. And I think it has worked.
Great. Well, there's a theme here. We'll come back to it. But let's talk about just now, let's get really deep into the work. And then I want to talk about two pieces of work in particular.
Yeah.
Which I bet you'll guess. But let's just talk about the work. So let's start with the briefing. I've always believed the brief is critical. Brief is where it all starts. If you get the brief right, chances you're getting the work right is like exponentially higher. Now, in my experience, every agency comes in and they have their own view of the brief, and everybody creates a brief, and sometimes it's more simple, sometimes it's more complex. But you really keyed into the brief, but you also keyed into this notion of the brief and I love this. This was like, you have no idea, when I got into it and started studying just the notion of it, I just loved the whole idea of the brief and. So maybe just talk a little bit about the brief, but get to the and opportunities.
Yeah.
Because I think that that's really, when I look at the work and I read about you and I read about Kelly and I read about the success you've had, it is all about and opportunities.
Yeah. So as an art director, I obviously also love brands in general. Like when I was at BBDO, it was energy with BBDO, and back to the swag, it was this little bolt, and we will inject energy into everything we did. And it became a thing. Everyone was having a t-shirt and everything. And these, like, we have to leave that energy. And I think back then, something that I learned from Denise, it was her energy. It was like, I understand why this agency is called Energy BBDO. Like, I got Denise Paul in front of me. But then when we moved to FCB, something that I kept looking at our logo, it was like, everyone talks about this side of the equation, which is the FCB part, but I'm like, what about the and? You know, like everyone sees the agency for this, but I want to know what is this and? And I think that's where it all started. It was more about asking myself, what is that and? And I think what has helped in my career and the work that we all have done until now, it's always the and. It's what Susan made incredible as the never finish idea. It's the whole idea that the work is never done. There's always a little bit more. There's always a little bit something. And I stick back since the beginning to this thought about and. So even though I feel that something's great or something is good enough or it's almost there, I was like, and could we try this? And if you ask yourself always and, you're just adding craft to it. You're adding a spin to it. You're trying to think, is there anything else that I haven't think about these consumers? Is there anything about the brief that I haven't thought? What if we could be do, and can we do this? And can we do that? Clients, I believe there's nothing like worse to go to a client without the homework. I would say bring the homework and. Because if users structure your mind with an and in life, those ands are the ones who unlock beautiful work. And I think that's where all this started. And it has worked incredible because every time we have things in front of us or in front of the clients, we're that, to the point that nowadays, if you walk into any of our meetings, you have the planners or the account team or the creative, no matter who it is, always uses the and now as part of their talk track. And it's beautiful because like we're thinking that we should do this. And we found actually that on your business, there's an opportunity of doing that. That and opportunity is where magic comes through. And it unlocks, it shows that you're passionate. It shows that there's love. It shows that you care. It just shows. So you, at any level that you use or apply the and, the outcome is beautiful. And I think that's where it all started.
Great. I love it. It talks to me in so many ways Because first of all, I believe it. I mean, it's something that I've always tried to practice in my life, but I do believe that it does make the difference when you just keep saying and like, okay, what's next, what's next, what's next, and you keep pushing it, you keep laddering it till it's infinite.
Right.
And then at some point you just say, okay, we'll stop for now, but then there's always another and afterwards.
Always.
So let's talk about two pieces of work that are, I think, are very clearly outcomes of this. They're both about change, but very interesting change and very different change, and the work is completely different, obviously, which I love. Let's start with boards of change, because I think what's so interesting to me about boards of change, I'm going to let you explain it. I don't want to explain the work, but just again, the notion in the biggest of going from a symbol of brokenness to a symbol of fixing. So broken to fixing, not solved, but to fixing, to solution. And I just think there's brilliance there. But more importantly, there's a real outcome. So the outcome is not just, the outcome is the work, which, very often we see. And, we've all seen the awards awarded to work whose outcome has just been the work. And I've always been a foe of that. This is real outcomes. This is real life, people doing something, people taking action. And I love the work. So why don't you talk about it and how you got to it, how you went to the city of Chicago with an and?
Yeah, I think we all saw it. I think we, good or bad, we all learned a lot during the George Floyd time. And I think when all these boards went out and we were just sitting and talking about it, you could just see like this sadness and people just trying for change. But if you look through history keeps repeating itself. Right now it was pieces of plywood with drawings and illustrations. Back then it used to be like signs of things, of messages. Every time things happen over and over.
Andrés, go back 1 second. Just I want to make so everybody is clear. What we're talking about is the plywood that was put over store windows during that period of time in Chicago, in New York, in many, many cities. And in some cities, as we know, what was the sign of hopefulness? They brought in artists to paint the plywood. But at the end of the day, it was still plywood up on a window because we were worried the window was going to get broken.
Exactly. And I think what happened is that each neighborhood, their own local artists started drawing these things. It was never that we went and drew this. It was real messages of hope.
Right.
And or like cries of hope. But the reality is that, being completely honest, that doesn't change anything. Action, if we don't take action, nothing will change ever, So what we talked about, it was like, and we went through a bunch of ideas when said, like, what can we do with these boards? But at the same time, boards went up and went down in a matter of 2 or 3 weeks. So we were like, all right, we need to do something. Well, we are very close to the city of Chicago, and boards of change was that. And so like, what if we turn these boards into voting booth? We were in a year of voting, obviously, and a year of census. And we were just like, we need to remind people that if they don't register to vote, they will never have the chance to have an impact. If they truly want change, they need to take action. They need to vote. They need to elect the leaders that can help us achieve the change that we've been waiting for so many years. So what we did is we turned them on this beautiful booth of registration. Actually, they had a QR code. You would go into it, you'll scan it, and you'll register. The biggest problem that we had is that in many neighborhoods, people were not, some were just pretty far to go for registration. They were just not going for registration, but they were the same people that were having those cries for hope. So we had to remind them, the same way that you put this up, now we got to do something about it. And I think that's where the power it got. We also had the beautiful opportunity to work with Mayor Lori Lightfoot, and she was very strong about it to make sure that we could get registration and get all the people out into the polls. So everything just aligned perfectly. It was a matter of actually like 72 hours to get an approval, because we had to go find the plywoods before they were scratched or thrown away. We had to contact the artists to make sure that they were okay for us to use those boards, and obviously not destroy, but repurpose their artwork, and then find where were those perfect places around the city where we can put them so we can drive registration. So it was an incredible moment, an incredible support by the city, by neighborhood leaders, by artists. Everyone felt that this was the right thing to do, the same way that we all felt. So we assembled a team of people that they were very passionate about the work. That's something that actually I'll talk about in a second. Everyone was like, we need to do this. When you put the people that are passionate about an idea or about an act, in this case, people over deliver. And everyone was just like, what do we have to do? It was COVID, there was riots. It was just like the odds of making this happen, it was pretty hard. But everyone started gathering around this idea, and how can we make it stronger? What is the next thing that we can do? And can we take it here? And can we take it there? And who else can help us? And that's how Boards of Change was created. Then when we see registrations went up, we were lucky enough to see the little things happen here and there. The community responded incredible to it. It goes back like, what do we do now? Do we scrap them, or can they live longer? And we kind of thought about it, and then we put it now at the museum, where actually they're placed at the African Museum here, the African American Museum here in Chicago, where people can still go there, understand why they were created, understand why they were part of the history in the city and the impact they had for registration, but people can actually still register right now through those boards. So hopefully they'll live for many years to come, and registrations will keep going up. And the change that everyone in different communities have been looking for, they can understand that the only way is—
And registration did go up against the benchmark, and voting went up as well.
Correct.
So, in a city that traditionally has Chicago's always had a fairly good turnout. In fact, before your time, but the famous Chicago thing was vote often, vote early, and vote often.
Yes.
But the truth is, you did have better turnout and more registration. So.
And that was the goal. It was like, we can talk about the issues all day long, but we can act on it and make your voices get them to the polls. And that's a great
program. The second one is a little more commercial, is also about change. So that was Boards of Change. This one is Contracts for Change. And so obviously you guys are big on change, which is great. That's part of the AND, because AND is all about change. But I think what's interesting about this, so it's for big brand, Anheuser-Busch, a good sub-brand of theirs, Michelob Ultra Organic, which is a very interesting product. Most interesting is that it probably could be a bigger product, except they can't get enough organic product to make a final product, which then led to the big idea.
Yes, I think on this one, I was very lucky to work also with FCB in New York with Gabriel Schmidt and his team, and it was a collaboration. And again, well, the whole idea here, it was like, we keep on asking ourselves, like, every brand talks about the planet and sustainability and all this, and I'm organic, and everyone's eating organic. But what are you doing about it? And then when we started digging deeper, we understand that only 3% of the land in the United States it's organic, and that's a huge problem. As our brands and our products start talking about more eating or drinking organic, what are we doing about it? And I think when you start looking at the economics behind it, it gets even harder for farmers that has done it one way for so many years. And what we went for our client, it was the idea of, can we do a contract with them? How can we help them switch to organic, which takes around 3 years for the land to turn organic. And you can imagine that they will lose money while they're turning their land into that. So we had to figure out a system that will work for both ways and understand that it will be the effect or the outcome of this. It was not only for us as a brand that we are obviously organic, but it was like to give access of organic to everyone and other brands in years to come. So it has been an incredible project. It started already 2 years ago, and we're starting to seeing some of the farmers already almost on the other side. So when you start seeing that, you know you have done an incredible platform, and you have truly impacted the land to make sure that we have that place that we all wanted to have. And I think I say a lot to my teams. I say, like, something that I love about creativity, or about all of us, is that we have the power to feel change with our creativity. And I think when we have brands that believe in creativity and understand the power of creativity, and they gave us the access to feel change, things like Contract for Change come out into the world. And I think that was the beauty about this project, and it's a never finished project.
So now let's take like those are two huge, major award-winning pieces, and let's look at New York festivals and your role this year. And what do you hope to accomplish? What should people be thinking about as they think about the work that they're going to enter? What should they be thinking about? What should they be thinking about? What you're going to be looking at? What you hope the juries are going to be looking at?
I think it depends on the category, like always. I always try to see a little bit beyond things. I am the type of creative. Maybe that's why D&AD I'm so obsessed with it and never finish, because I always try to see what else is to it. Is it because a film that just stands by itself, but there's nothing else after? I don't know. I think it becomes, after a while, very invisible for at least for me. I can, unless it's on craft, on some categories that it deserves to be.
Right, yeah, obviously.
Right. But I try to look for ideas that are just bigger than just that thing. That it's just the beginning of something bigger. That it will have a bigger impact from a brand standpoint, from a community standpoint, whatever it is. But I always try to look, what is the impact after? I want to see, like, oh my God, what is next? I'm just waiting and salivating what will become next. And I think that's the kind of work, and it's like the work that makes you jealous at the same time. It's one of those, like, it's I don't want to use the example of boards of change, but we had so many people saying, like, oh, those boards were in front of us, and I'm like, I know. And this incredible team came out with the idea, and I say those are the ideas that I see, that those things that are there, that they're just sitting in front of us, and how do we just gonna make you connect on a very different level. And I think, and you know it, David, those ideas, when they're in front of you, you're like, there it is, and there's nothing else around it. And so I think we're gonna see a lot of that. I feel that not everything is an act. We just gotta watch out that everything is an act. I think you have to understand that the brand comes first. I also think that a lot of the brands they need to understand the difference between really having a true purpose out in the world or being opportunistic. I've seen a lot of work that feels opportunistic, and I really try to see, is there really something behind this? Or it was like, oh, this happened, let me just go throw myself into that.
Right. Borrowed interest.
So impact, and obviously that human connection, just like that one thing. Consumers, you know how it is. People say, like, we're super rational when we go shopping, and we all know it's a lie. There's that little thing that triggers you and reminds you of that film or that thing that you saw that connects you to a brand at a level that is just not transactional. And I think that is the work that I would love to see more. Work that is not just transactional, but it connects at a very different level with me and whoever's around us. So
I hope everybody paid attention to that. And I would rewind this to the beginning of that particular piece of our discussion, so that you can listen carefully to how you should be thinking about your work. But if I would summarize it, I would say that as you look at your work and as you write it up, think about the and. Think about the and what. Think about the and so what. and think about what the impact was and what was the impact. Because I think that you're absolutely right. I think those are the things, as I, chaired juries and sat on juries, those are always the things that spoke to me. And to your point, it's always interesting. I think when you see great work, there's always that notion of, wow, I'm jealous. I wish I had thought about it. But the truth is, I think that in retrospect, I was always much more like proud that people in our industry could had thought about these things, and that we have the opportunity to learn from them and to see how others think. And so that's how I feel about boards of change and contracts of change, because I just think that there's so much to learn from how you can look at commercial work and how you can look at a city and create opportunities that are just incredible, but actually to have impact and make a difference, and something that lives on. Like the fact that you're in the third year, and I look forward to reading more about that, because I'd love to know about the farmers who in the third year, because it's a 3-year contract, have now turned their land over. Anheuser-Busch has agreed to buy a certain amount of their produce. And what does that mean?
I also think that
how do we look to that? How do we look to that for the future? I'm so excited to learn more about that and follow this year through.
Yeah, I think the other thing that we try to do a lot is about and Susan tells us all the time, the best work for our biggest brands. And I think Contract for Change is a perfect example of that. And I think because normally we see ideas like, oh, who's that client versus there you go.
There you go.
We got to keep pushing and putting our energy in those places, because there is always the great client that understands the power of creativity, and creativity as an economic multiplier, and great work we'll do it, and we'll get out there and make things.
Right. And screw the people who still write, people in our own industry who still write that the agency model is dead, gone, or broken, dead, and gone. And it's like, hello, guys, pay attention to the work that's coming from great agencies and the great clients who understand where great work comes from. And I think it changes the discussion. So Andres, I just want to thank you. This has been incredible. And I just want to kind of summarize, because I think that what so struck me in our discussion is the notion of humanity, the way you talk about your teams, the way you talk about your clients, talk about the work, the way you talk about your mentors. I think the humility is really critical. And I always say great leaders all have true humility, not, Uriah Heep is in, Dickens, hey, Mr. Copperfield, that's bullshit. I think that true humility is just understanding that we're all part of something bigger, and that there are other people in our lives who influence us, who help us, who we learn from. And it's not a hierarchy. Learn from people who work for you, people who work with you, people who work above you, below you. And I think you've given us an incredible look into just how successful being real and being a person can be, and thinking about people first. So
thank you, David.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much. And please give my best to Carter and to Susan, and tell Kelly I think she's very lucky.
I'm the lucky one with the 3 of them. So thank you so much, David.
So it's been great talking to you, and thank you for being a new FOD, friend of David. And I look forward to more and more, and just following you as I have been for a while, but now it's going to be even more interesting for me and more meaningful. And I thank everybody. So remember, when you work on your entries, think about all the things that you heard from Andres. Think about the and, think about showing the impact. Think about making it clear that there's more there than your little execution. There's more there than your nice film. There's more there than whatever it is that you think you've done. And that's really critical and important. And Andrés Ordóñez, thank you so much. And best to your family and to everybody. And just, again, wonderful speaking with you. And to everyone else, this is David Sable for New York Festivals, Creativity from the Other Side, bringing you yet another incredible great leader from our industry and elsewhere that we can learn from. Stay safe out there. See you soon.
Thank you, David.